Okay, we're going to try this again.
Okay.
So we're going to be discussing the highlights of our last accountability call, which was for October 1st. And it was another good meeting. It lasted for 2.5 hours. What does that?
Yeah, looking good.
We're getting some feedback. I'm going to try to fix that. Okay. So we're going to keep rolling and see what happens. We had quite a few people join us that night. It was, yeah, I don't know why I'm getting that feedback from my mic.
Jason is saying it looks good from his end.
Was that?
Jason was saying everything looks good for him.
Yeah, but a few seconds after I speak, then it plays on my computer.
Mm. Live stream a different animal. Mark was saying if you have other devices open, you have to turn the volume down.
Yeah, the only one I have, so I have YouTube open and I have Zoom open. Am I supposed to close one of those?
Can you mute the YouTube one?
I'm not sure. Let's see. They're trying to help us in the chat. So my audio on Zoom is good. And then on Zoom, can you still hear me, Mikey?
Mhm. Are you getting feedback?
Right now, I think I'm okay. All right. So we'll start rolling. Hopefully the guys in the chat can let us know if we're doing okay. But we were going to discuss the highlights from our last accountability meeting, which was on October 1st. I had quite a few notes, and it started out with someone new joined us. She was a California investor. She had properties in California, and she was saying that she was thinking about selling one to invest in a different market, but a lot of the people on the call thought that wasn't such a great move because she was cash flowing. And with the way appreciation is in California, they thought it would be good to keep that and just use some of the cash flow to move to a different market if she wanted to. So, and she was brought to the group by Eden, who joined us a couple months ago. So that was really nice. What do you think about that? Should she keep her California property or sell it and take the money and move it to a new market? What are your thoughts?
I like being, if you spend all the time in one market developing your team and your systems, I could understand now maybe it's harder to continue finding new deals in that market just because maybe the price to rent has gotten way out of hand. But we didn't really understand where she is in her journey, and I would like to get a overarching idea of that. And that's a good thing is the group can chime in, see what they think, but we definitely have to ask more questions, see where she's at.
Yeah, I don't think I recall her saying how long she'd been investing, but I imagine it's been a few years because she was doing quite well on that property. The and then from there we got into a discussion with one of our other friends who she was house hacking in Florida, a duplex, and she moved to Atlanta and she's house hacking her next duplex. But before she moved to Atlanta, she was saying she lost about $11,000 with a contractor that was supposed to be doing work for her before she arrived. And a lot of different people spoke up about that. She was wondering at first if she should go after the contractor and try to get some of her money back. But then after that, she was thinking when she met the contractor, he didn't seem too stable. So she started to feel maybe concerned that if she did take him to court or something, that he might come back and do something to her property or to her. She lives with her husband and they have a pet. So that was a big concern of hers. Some of the people in the group were asking what she might do different, or did she spread herself too thin trying to manage the project at a distance, while she's trying to move and all that stuff. She works, 60 hours a week. So it seemed like maybe she was trying to do too much and spread herself a little bit thin. You have properties at a distance, and you have a full-time job. How has that been for you trying to coordinate work and find good people to work with? You're in Hawaii and you invest in Pittsburgh.
Yo, Mark, the financial firefighter, he does it right. He wakes up, what, 3 in the morning Hawaii time? So that's 9 a.m. Pittsburgh time. I, I'm waking up during their lunch, but I'm slowly trying to chip away, wake up earlier. So the first thing I do when I wake up is I focus on that real estate just because of the timing difference. But what I liked about Christine's story and what she was talking about is dealing with sometimes in real estate, you got to be confrontational. You got to have those hard conversations. When I did the interview with Zuber, that's what he stressed is like that's it. That's just something that comes up. Even with your team, you got to have hard conversations and it's expected. So I think that's what she's trying to figure out is she was able to dial in on one of her tenants saying, "Can I pay late?" That the tenant asked her. She said, in a professional manner, you can pay late, but this is the steps I'm going to do. I'm going to issue the pay or no quit. And she had it all mapped out. So in that aspect, she's doing great. And I think it's just her getting her systems right. And she's going to start doing that for being more of the hard conversations for the rest of her investing.
Yeah, and that was another topic that came out of what she was saying. A few people in the group felt like they were a little bit too soft. they were too quick to accept excuses from their tenants or whoever it was, contractors or whoever it might be. So it is kind of a fine balance. I think she's in a good spot now because she felt more comfortable picking a contractor to finish the work now that she's there in the market, living in the unit, and she just finished the rehab on the unit that she's going to be renting out on the other side. There's so much that goes into it. I think you and I were talking also about, well, we got into talking about contractors that night too, and one of our other friends in Texas was saying that his plumber is kind of ghosting him after he'd been working with him for a while and he's not finished with the work, but he can't, get a hold of the guy. And my first thought, because I've dealt with a lot of people over the years, is, and I mentioned it that night, that, you know, everybody, they're just people, right? So if something is going on in their life, like, they're getting divorced or they're just fighting with their wife or girlfriend or whoever it might be, um, maybe they start drinking or get into drugs. I just was joking around, but plumbers seem to be really susceptible to starting to do drugs after a while. I don't know if it's all the solvents they smell or what, but
The PVC glue.
yeah, the PVC glue makes you happy. But yeah, I mean, things happen, and a lot of times, maybe not just contractors, but if you're not really financially responsible, like when I first started out, I found myself getting behind on a job, so I would have to take another job to be able to keep going. I didn't bother my clients for more money because it was on me, but you take on too much and then you're running around trying to keep everybody happy and then nobody's happy. So, contractors are a rare breed. I think you just have to be careful. Hopefully, you can get a good recommendation from someone else in the market, somebody that they work with and trust. That's how we've done our business over all the years, just by word of mouth. Um, so she also mentioned now that she has the place up for rent, she was saying that she was having trouble finding qualified tenants. Credit score was her big issue that night, I think. Um, but she even offered to show us her listing on Zillow and got a lot of good feedback from the people that were on the call. And they were also saying that credit scores are kind of market specific too, right? Because we've heard maybe in California, landlords would expect a higher credit score. But in places like we have a place in Gary, and I think their minimum is 580, something like that. But they also say, if a person has a better credit score than that, then they can qualify for a loan and buy their own place. Do you know what your PM's minimum is on your credit scores for Pittsburgh?
Yeah, 600.
Okay. So, and two, do you think that the type of property you have for rent plays a part? I know you're basically C class like we are. If you were renting in a B market or an A market, would you expect a higher score?
I would.
Yeah. Um,
I liked how Ray gave good advice, and he's an 11-year professional photographer for real estate. He even brought some of his pictures and showed it to Christine so she could compare. And they were just talking about the return on investment in professional photography, just having that, say if the tenant leaves, can use those same pictures over and over and over again,
mhm.
attract the most clients. And just looking at, he just recommended just looking at Zillow, looking at Redfin or whatever you use, you can see what stands out, what picture stands out. You could reach out to that agent, that listing agent, get their resources and slowly start building that out. So I really like that advice.
Yeah, and somebody also brought up the point that, you know, when we have a property and it needs work, we hire professionals to do plumbing, electrical, other contracting jobs. Why wouldn't you hire a professional to do the pictures? I thought that was a great point. And they also, did you mention about them maybe going and looking at other rentals in the area. And if you run across pictures that really catch your eye, to reach out to the agent for that property and ask them who did their photography. And then you could get in contact with a photographer in the area where your rental's at. I thought that was a great tip too.
And even Ray talking about his short-term rental success, how if I think he even had a family member reach out to him, they're starting their own short-term rental. So he gave them his playbook, all the things they instituted that makes them successful. It's just great to hear. And he's someone you can always reach out to if you had questions about anywhere from professional photography to how do they use systems for their STR. So it's another great resource and is representative of the ORAT community.
Yeah, we always talk about that a lot because it's really one of the biggest and most special things about everybody in the group. When we first got in, we were concerned that people would be tight-lipped, right? They wouldn't share any information or try to help us to reach our goals. But it's been the exact opposite in this group. Just like Ray, everybody wants to help. They want to see you succeed. They want to, just like we do, we want to help people avoid some of the pitfalls that we've run across in our journey so far. If we can help them get further faster, that's even better. What else did we talk about that night? So, oh, you mentioned Airbnb, and it's been something on social media lately. Some of the stuff we watch where they're talking about how Airbnb is dying, but some of the hosts that we have on our call were saying that most of the ones that are failing are the ones that jumped in 2020 when you couldn't miss, right? And they just threw some furniture in a place and called it an Airbnb. And they did quite well for a while. But the ones who are still doing well are the ones who are being creative about how they decorate their places and what amenities they put in to make it to where they can keep those. I think they call them super host ratings. You want to keep those up. And I know John in Reno, Deconstructing Dreams, is doing quite well. And he's really creative. He's putting some really special stuff into his places. And I think you need to set your property apart. Whether it's Airbnb or you're just listing it on Zillow, you want to make it stand out and catch people's eye so that you can rent it out sooner. Um, we had an investor from Texas who came in with a question about an applicant he was looking at. It was a mother and son, and the son had a really good credit score, but the mother didn't have such a good credit score. And I believe he had to put both of their incomes in for them to qualify for the place. And he was wondering what some of the people thought. Before I say what I thought, what did you think?
When we talked about this, we were more interested in sticking to your criteria and remaining firm, but there are there was all these other things like the timeline of it, and I know winter's approaching, so gotta factor those into account. And I guess everyone has their own way of screening, but on the surface, I think I would want to wait until maybe a more qualified applicant comes up.
Yeah, it is really hard when you have a vacant unit, right? Because you went through it, Cynthia and I went through it, where our places were vacant for months. And but one thing I wouldn't do would be to take any tenant just to fill the unit, right? After being in this group for so long, you understand what they mean when they say a vacant unit is better than taking in a bad tenant, because that's just going to cost you money right off the bat. So I kind of felt the same way that you just mentioned with with the mom and son. And like I was telling you before we started recording, this business is so challenging, even if everything, well, we haven't seen everything perfect yet, but if everything was perfect, you're still going to have challenges and you're still going to have things you deal with. Why would you bring in a questionable tenant and just add that pressure? You don't need that. So I think some things that have come up with other investors, depending on the market, right? So on the properties that we invest in, our mortgages aren't very high, so it's easier to, you still don't want to pay the mortgage each month out of pocket, but it's easier having a rental in St. Louis where the mortgage is, $500 or $700 instead of being in Washington where it might be $2,000 or something like that. We've heard that story too. And some of our investors have told me that, for example, they'll buy in Gary and they'll think, oh, if it's vacant for a couple months, that's, $1,500. Where if their Washington properties are vacant, it's a lot more. So there's that. But hopefully they got some good information from all the suggestions that were kicked around that night.
Speaking of your investing, Mark had a question. Will you consolidate in one market or continue to spread out?
Well, that's interesting. You and I were talking a few minutes ago about how, this journey has just been ups and downs, right? And I was thinking the other day about the next property that we buy, and I felt like I was feeling kind of gun shy because even though we have 10 doors to date, I don't feel like I did it that well. So I'm unsure of the next one. But you and Cynthia brought up some great points. I mean, now we know better, right? So hopefully the next one um, would be in a market. We're kicking around Washington, right? Because we're probably going to end up moving there. So I think we would probably buy something there. We might, and by then we'll know how the St. Louis properties are going to be performing. Actually, all the properties performing. So we'll be able to tell if we should move some money from one of those markets and put it into Washington since we'll be up there. In maybe, I wouldn't say a better class of property, but a more expensive property like Dion talks about, because we've seen his success in that market and he knows the market. And I think with all of our friends that are up there, there's Flavio, Michelle, Anna, Dion, Alex,
Josh, and
and
Josh.
Josh, yeah, and
Yeah.
Josh Burdick. So I think we have so many resources there now that we can pick a good property that will do well for us in the future. So I think, I guess consolidation might be the right word. If because we could sell three in St. Louis and barely be able to buy one in Washington. So we'll have to see how those perform. And they all still are fairly new. The ones in St. Louis are only a year old and they've only been rented for 6 months. So they have a little bit of time to go before they prove themselves.
Yeah, you have a lot of future moves to think of because you're focusing on your reserves right now.
Mhm.
We had a good conversation with Dion about how does everyone look at their reserves and how do they calculate that based on their portfolio. Then you're also looking at once the reserves are in place, how can you make the move to Washington? Then reevaluate if that's the last piece that you may need. Then you could retire, hopefully, and then use that to be stacking for if you want to go out of state again, or if you want to maybe build more in your own market that you're living in of Washington.
Yeah, there are a lot of things to consider. And I think we're we're fortunate. Like we were talking about all the resources up there, and I think Justin Canberra, Justin, he's an agent that we're hoping to work with. He's been sending us listings and a lot of interesting properties, but he has an unusual what you call it. When he looks at a property, he's looking at it to see if there are multiple streams of income, right? And I really like that. So, for example, he's got a parking lot, I think, on one of his properties, and he gets income from those renting out those parking spaces. Um, we've talked about Cynthia might consider a property that maybe had some horse stables where you could board horses, which is pretty passive for the landlord, right? The the pet owner takes care of all their needs. It's just they just need a space to keep them and be able to exercise them and stuff. So I like his vision. I think that could help us because you and I were talking earlier about Cynthia and I retiring and our portfolio being fairly new. So we don't have time for it to 2x or 3x times our monthly nut, as they say. But if we could meet our monthly expenses plus 1,000 or two a month, that would be ideal for me. But I think to really be comfortable, you have to have those reserves built up. You have to have an emergency fund, and that's the best you can do, right? We can't keep worrying, or like Dion says, it's just going to be one more year before we do it. And you brought up the story of the Japanese gentleman a little while ago. If you want to share
That
that.
Yeah, that Zuber and Mark had talked about when they're reviewing the nasty comments and commenting on them. Zuber read an article, 61-year-old Japanese man, he was diligently saving for retirement. Once he hit that mark, a year later, I think his wife unfortunately passed away from cancer. So he looked at that and evaluated, was kind of stressing out and almost was asking himself why. What was this all for? If because we were planning this life together that we'd have all this time that we could enjoy retirement life, and that stuck with me, made me think a lot about it. And even you talked about a TikTok you had seen, TikTok account with woman with wings, and you were kind of seeing repairs coming up for some of your properties. And whenever we see that from property management, it does get stressful. You're trying to think, okay, we gotta account for this now, do this repair, but then you came across this account, and that means you kind of see things differently.
Yeah, exactly. I think what I was getting at was there were three things that came up with our properties over like 3 or 4 days, right? So it was just one thing after another. And then and they weren't huge things. The last one, like I told you, was a garage door needed to be repaired. So it's not a big thing, but when it's the third thing in the week, you just start to think, what's next and why? Why is there something every day that we have to deal with? And then, I got smacked in the face because I came across this and it's girl with wings and she's on TikTok. And I know I get teased about being an old guy on TikTok, but this young lady has no arms and her posts are her daily routine. She has a daughter, that shows her getting the daughter dressed just with her feet. She drives her to school. She drives with her feet. They show her washing her car and she does all these things and she has no arms. So I, I guess it shouldn't take something like that to make me realize how fortunate we are. But I'm glad I ran across it because I guess I needed the reminder. Um, and you and Cynthia and I were talking earlier about, well, you brought up a good question, wondering if real estate is stressful, and do you think it has changed you maybe to be not negative, but to react to negative things throughout your day in a different way? You know, maybe being less patient with someone or arguing with someone where normally you wouldn't do that. That's not just your personality. Um, Do you think it's affected you at all? Or do you feel stress from the real estate stuff?
I do notice I'm more quicker to anger, and I've seen that translate to work specifically. But in terms of real estate, I really enjoy it. So I'm happy to listen on all the discussions, all the calls. I know Mark, financial firefighter, he has a live stream tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern. So check that out with Cody Davis. But it's all the other stuff because I know a lot of us are trying to escape the W-2 life, get out of the rat race. But that is what I'm more turning anger towards. But the real estate stuff, I like to keep on continuing at it, growing it because it's something I can build on my own and see results from the action I take into that. But it's the work stuff. It feels like kind of like the drag thing. It's like I'm never a lot of times I'm listening to the calls and then I can't really talk because I got my boss near me or got the customer near me, and that also makes me angry. It's like I wish I could be spending more time with the real estate stuff and not have to focus on work and all these other outside things. But when you talk about grow with wings and you talk about implementing, that's something I need to do better is being grateful in the morning. I have my health, my family, my friends, have real estate. I'm able to invest in real estate, but then we don't really sometimes we just forget about it and we think about, what's next? What I gotta do now? And you get so bogged down into that, you don't really take a step back and look at how everything else influences your life in a positive way.
Yeah, it's like we said before, you don't have to look too far to find somebody who has it way worse than you do. Um, and there was something else about, we are lucky, so it would be nice. Maybe we can't do it every day, but every once in a while to help someone else out, right? To pull them up with us, help them however they need help. Um, but I'm glad I got the reminder. I think I was wondering. I don't think it's always the pressure of real estate that changes your moods, right? But it's just the world today that we live in because you you run into so many people each day. Like I was mentioning to you earlier about the rude person at the checkout stand, crazy, stupid drivers, all those things influence our moods, right? And so maybe it does take a little push once in a while to make us realize that that's not a big deal, right? You get to go home to be with your family. That's the most important thing. I've shared with, um, I think I've shared with you the time that I almost went to prison, but I don't think I've talked much about that. We'll have to get into that some other time. But that was a wake up call. You know, I I actually went and I had to go get pre booked because I was on my way. Um, I might be doing these from my jail cell if things didn't turn around. So we've got to be careful about that.
Yeah, I don't think they let you do live streams in prisons.
It seems like I don't know. I guess it depends if you're in a blue collar prison or a white collar prison. I forget what they call the difference. Um, anyway, was there anything else about the call that I missed before we get into a couple of other topics that people are asking about?
That seems about everything that I had. I know Austin had recommended Hemlane as a good screening on their site. And then I did like that comment from Charles. It's when you stretch yourself out, that's when it doesn't work out as planned. Yeah, but that's about everything.
Yeah, I was talking to someone the other day about the different calls in school, right? And seems like there's just about something for everybody. We have um, some more serious accountability calls. Ours is it's called an accountability call, and I've told people, if they need accountability, we can certainly give them a nudge and help them reach their goal for next week. Not too many people come in with a set goal that they need help with. And that's been a challenge over the last several months is making sure people are getting value out of the meeting because sometimes we stray. And sometimes that's what we need too. We just need to blow off some steam, like you said, or I don't know. We can talk about anything that's going on in anybody's life if they want to. And people seem to appreciate that as far as setting our call, um, setting it out differently than the other calls. Other ones are more focused, like on out of state investing. Um, there's one for real estate agents. Um, there's now the call that Cody hosts with, so it's kind of, well, it started out as kind of like is it, I forget what the call is
Like,
called.
yes, like Gen X and up.
Okay,
Yeah.
the Gen X call.
Yeah.
Um, I always feel too old to attend that one, but they said I'm welcome, so I might try it one of these days.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of time though. I also talk to people that, you'll see them in every single meeting, and I just wonder how they manage to do that every week. That's a lot of time. It seems that that could wear you out pretty quick, but find the one that's right for you, and get the help if you need it.
Oh, Gen Z. Sorry, Dylan.
Gen Z. That's Yeah, us old guys trying to remember stuff. Well, me, not you, Mikey. Um, so what else? Is there any other questions in the chat that you think might be good to talk about? I was agreeing with those comments that Josh is making. Those are all on point. I think the one of the other things, I think Mark brought it up in the chat, and you also brought it up, was that video that the three amigos did the other day, talking about being a nice guy or a good man. And in some of our private conversations with our friends, I was saying I was confused because, to me, I thought they go hand in hand, right? If you're a good man, it seems automatically that you're a nice guy. I don't see anybody thinking, like they wouldn't say Frank is a good man, but he's a jerk, or not like him because he is a good man. Did you see the video? I wonder what you took away from it.
I was trying to understand it too, so I had to watch the original clip that he was referencing with Matt McConaughey, talking about he was taking on all those romantic comedy roles. And he liked it. The pay was good, everything was going smoothly. But deep down in his core, he knew that wasn't who he was. So he broke out of that and through that realized, okay, now I'm in a much better place. I'm happier. This is who I really am. And we were trying to understand what that meant for Zuber. And is it something with the that doomer thing he was trying to do with the titles and all the negative feedback he was getting in the comments and he didn't like that, so he stepped away from it? Or is it more the comments that he was getting and he didn't respond to? That's why Matt was talking about him defending Zuber and getting into the comments and eviscerating people like we love to see him do. Or we're just trying to understand where is that coming from and how do we internalize things? How do we process that stuff out? So I was just curious on your end.
Yeah, I think for me, I've never been anyone. I don't like confrontation. I don't like um, crocs. I don't like. I guess I like to stay middle of the road, um, and I guess kind of just do my thing, and I guess not draw attention to myself. I know maybe that sounds kind of weird being on social media and having a YouTube channel and stuff, but and I don't know how it will be if I start getting negative stuff like Zuber does, right? After you grow so much, and especially on lives, because they are kind of broadcast out there to everybody. And I've noticed a couple times where some weird people jump in and are acting stupid, but I don't like to draw attention to myself when I'm out and about or in my regular life. But if there is something that you see that is wrong, I will stand up for that person or myself, my family for sure. Um, the other part of that conversation was, and I'm not sure how to connect it, but if someone asks you for advice, you know, do you be soft with them and just pacify them, or are you firm and give them the truth? I think if that person can't handle the truth, then they're not someone that you you can really grow a good friendship with. I think the person that takes that information that you're giving and can see you're sending it from a good place and will go out and act on it, that's the kind of friend you want to have. Um, and that's the kind of people I see in this group. You know, even on that Wednesday call, one of our regulars thought he was being a little bit hard on someone on the call, but the other person appreciated the truth, right? I think that's where we need to be.
And we talked about iron sharpening iron. I know Matt likes to bring that line up, and I love that line because when you have criticism like that, it's more meant to help you out in the long term. And if there's an investor who will hear that and not like that, maybe or not listen, they'll go off and do their own thing. They can learn that way, or they can actually take the advice. And because you've helped me a lot when I looked at that one duplex, I miscalculated the repairs needed, and that helped me back out of the deal. So appreciate that. And even on other smaller repairs, I always check with you and the other contractors in the group. Like I reached out to Jacek. He's a glass man, glass entrepreneur, and he helped me kind of understand more the terminology and how do I present that to other contractors so I could get a better quote, knowing what I could exactly say and describe in the estimate I'm looking for. So those type of things really help out.
Yeah, I think that's a good point because what you're bringing up about the patio door that you need replaced, and there are certain terms. I mean, if you call someone up and aren't sure what to call this or that, and they don't know what you mean, they can't give you an estimate. I think these days it's helpful because a lot of them are saying, "Hey, just shoot me a picture so I can understand what you're talking about." With technology today, I think that's a lot easier to get your point across. And also, you might find some different options, like we just discussed. You can just replace the glass. You don't have to replace the whole door. So that might help save you some money, hopefully, if you find a company willing just to do the glass. But it seems like, well, the estimate that you got to replace the whole door, you thought it was pretty high, was a little high, but now because if you had gotten an estimate, say for 3,000 right off the bat, you might have thought that was too high also. But after we talked and we figured it out, you realized that 3,000 is more in line than five.
And that's what I like is about the Wolfpack mentality. I know Mark asked when is the Black Wolfpack Vegas shirts coming out, but that's part of the accountability cause. You have several contractors, you got entrepreneurs, you got investors starting out like me or more seasoned investors.
Yeah. And those shirts are coming out soon. The only issue is they didn't make mini me. So I don't know that Mark could get one, but we'll do our best. I mean, maybe we could go to Mattel or something and they'll design one for him. What else you got? Do you have more time? I should ask
Uh,
because I'm okay chatting if you are.
Yeah, that's everything I had. I don't know if you had topics, you always got the brain rolling questions on your mind. We just finished up the course calls this past month with Dion. It was great. Covered a lot of different topics. So just any
Yeah, yeah. Well, going back to the course call with Dion, and he is starting to ask everyone now how thick their skin is because he's going to give you the truth. He's going to give you his honest opinion, and I think everybody in the group can take it. Um, I know I don't know when he and I first met if he thought I was maybe didn't have very thick skin, but I've always told him, because he has used me and Cynthia as an example in on previous calls, and I told him I'm always for it because if we can't share all the information of a problem that we're having, we can't get a good response either, right? If the person that we're asking for help doesn't have all the information they need to give you their opinion or to a place to go to find the right information, then I don't see how you can get help. Sometimes it is hard. Sometimes you feel like, I don't know if I should share this out in the world. It's a little embarrassing, but I really believe that you need to share it all to get the right help.
It's because when he's going over communication tactics, strategically how he evaluates a conversation, lines it up. That was really interesting. And even you were talking about how he does Jedi mind trick us a lot, just based on how the questions he'll ask or the topics he'll come up with. And it's a smaller group. It's maybe 8, 10 of us.
Mm-hmm.
He will go over that reserves question and say, what do you consider reserves? Then he'll hear all the responses. Then he'll evaluate each one and come back with say, okay, are you guys ready for my answer? Because this is what, and he'll maybe pick out certain ones he'll want to talk about
Mm-hmm.
and really dive deep. And he'll say, just be ready. And just, you guys got to have thick skin because this is what I think and this is what I think you should change. And he even helped me change in how I underwrite too.
Yeah, and the other part that's been interesting, and we saw it happen live a few weeks ago, where they were doing the members only. It wasn't a course call, but he was looking at deals, and he ended up actually making an offer that day on a property that he was analyzing. I don't know if he got that one or if they countered his offer or what, but um, just going through that process. And I was talking about the Washington market earlier. I think he's still finding deals right off the MLS. So that gives me hope and optimism that we could find a deal there as well, if we move there or whatever it is. But yeah, he's a great example. And we were talking earlier too, because I just thought that we look at these guys, Dion, Matt, Zuber, and we kind of idolize them, or at least I have. And I've joked before about hoping that if people are around me more, if they will still like me, right? So I guess that goes into what I'm wondering about the guys, because now they're rising, and they talked about it the other day, right? They've always been this upper echelon of investors, but now they're falling into bigger groups. They're at BPCon this weekend, and so the way they were describing it is there's tiers, right? There's the mega guys, then there's another group that's kind of following them up, that Dylan and Lindsay are getting interviews on Bigger Pockets. Um, People getting interviewed by, I forget what the magazine was, but um, uh,
Is this Insider?
yeah, Business Insider, PTO for Life was on there. So there's another group of people rising as well. So that's just going to continue, and I think that was Zuber's one of Zuber's hopes in for school and for his legacy, right? To keep his name in the conversation for years to come after he's gone. And it seems to be working pretty well. I don't know what the enrollment is in school, but uh, the this group that we're in is bigger than school, right? There are several people that aren't in school, but people that we've kind of grown up with, starting back in 2019. And it's been a pretty amazing experience. Hopefully hopefully they won't forget us because now they're in the stratosphere with all these other millionaires and things like that. But It's good to see. I guess my other point to that was we've been seeing kind of a more emotional side of the guys, right? This question that Zuber asked seemed to really be hitting him hard. We've talked about, and we know Matt, Matt will go after anybody who comes at him with incorrect information. And I can understand why Matt gets so fierce about it because he doesn't want that information to affect us, right? If this person is talking some way of investing that isn't true or correct or whatever it might be, he's like, he wants to protect us from people like that. So he'll go after him, and we kind of kid about that, but we appreciate him for that. And even Dion has seemed more, I wouldn't say emotional. I don't know what the right word is for it, but you just can see it in him that something's hitting him harder than a lot of the stuff that he talks about. Um, so I guess they are really just people too, just like us. Any
I
other questions?
I think I'm good.
Are you speechless?
I had a thought, but I lost it.
Oh, well, Mark was asking when you're moving to Pittsburgh. Oh, and you're gonna, oh no, okay.
I keep on dropping hints. What do you think? What do you think? But it's
Yeah,
I think it's going to be a long game.
right. But you mentioned too, because our first thoughts are always the brutal winters there, right? But you were saying it snows in Japan too, and so they have winters like that there. Um, I I think in some of our past conversations we wondered like, where would you find work? What would you go after for work? Would she work doing something too? Would you guys house hack or buy a single family or those kinds of things? Have you thought it that far through?
I would definitely be interested in house hacking. I was even thinking about barista fire. I wouldn't mind a
Hmm.
part-time job while maybe instead of using property management, self-managing in state. So all these thoughts roll around in your head, but it is harder to pull off. You can talk a good game, but actually following through with it, it's a whole nother story.
Yeah, yeah, because we talked also in recent weeks about getting frustrated with property managers and thinking, I'm just going to go and manage myself. But when we really sit down and start making that list, the challenges are, well, I consider the challenges pretty extreme, like building a team 3 people deep, right? 3 plumbers, 3 electricians, 3 handymen, different thing, 3 roofers. Because I think if you only have one, so many things can happen where they're not available right when you need them or something like that, or finding that finding people that are available 24/7, especially plumbers. I think that's one of the big ones because if you have a water issue, that could be a real mess if the tenants, can't stay in the property or something like that. That was one of the big ones. But I shared with everybody a few weeks ago the difference in a bill that I paid for a plumbing issue. The PM was going to charge us 3,800 to do this work, and a plumber that we had been working with did the repair for under $500. And so that's the one that kind of set me off. And I started the list. We have people doing the hem lane thing. Um, that market in St. Louis has, I would imagine they have a lot of vendors available to them through hem lane. But if your property is out somewhere rural, I think it might be more of a challenge. Even Dana has mentioned that that's the case. They don't they don't have as many, plumbers or contractors or handymen available in smaller towns or if they're outside of a town too far, things like that. But I know you were digging into it a little bit too. What things did you run up against that you think might stall that process?
For Heavenly, it is, I think I was looking at, I realized I was being so spaced out when I actually was in Pittsburgh and I drove the different areas, I'm like, wow, okay, this property is far away from this property. So when I check with contractors, they'll go out to one side, but they won't go out to the other. So then I realized I would have to build maybe two separate teams in the two separate areas. So that was one of the things. But when I reached out to Hemlane and now you have that initial free consultation, then you can just have, I guess, a representative that you can text. So I was texting with him, asking him a bunch of different questions, and he was saying, "Yeah, we serve both in that area and this area." So that was a good feedback. But I was thinking about the Vegas event, and we were talking about it. I know downtown Grand Hotel is pretty popular among some of us. We were thinking of trying to get a group rate, and you actually reached out to the hotel trying to inquire, seeing how we could negotiate something, maybe even reaching out to other hotels saying, "Hey, we have this offer. Can you even beat this?" So that was kind of fun.
Yeah, when I called them, their sales team wasn't in. I called them late the other night, so I'm supposed to get a call back. And I was just going to ask because I know there's, from what you and I were just talking about, there's at least 10 people that are thinking about staying there. So that's what I went in with. I just said, we have a group that's coming to Vegas in February where they're going to be looking for a place to stay. Would you offer a discount of groups? What size groups would you consider? So hopefully they'll get back to me soon and we can spread that news. Hopefully it'll be good news. But also, the other day when I was researching room rates, I, I set up my search, I plugged in my dates, I got a rate, and then I stopped. And then within a few hours or the next day, they started sending me discount offers. So maybe that would be a way to, get, because they were up to 30% off and it went up. So that was if you did 3 nights or more. But people might do that too, wherever they're going to stay. And I think Dion might have mentioned that too. Sometimes he'll start to book like a rental car and then he'll drop it. And then pretty soon they're checking in with him, giving him a better rate each time. And so it seems like that works. And you guys sometimes you search incognito. Have you
Yeah.
done that? Yeah. Do you want to explain that, or do you know enough about it to explain it for people who haven't tried that yet?
Oh,
Because it's,
yeah, just in Google, you can click the incognito button and then it won't trace your IP, I'm thinking. And then I also have, what is that? The VPN that you can do so you could have a IP from anywhere. So
oh,
I'll click something like maybe a more cheaper market, and that'll what they will see. But now sites are getting pretty sophisticated where they won't even, if you have a VPN, they won't even let you access their sites. So
okay.
I know Redfin has started doing that, and I think Zillow too, where you're not even allowed to look at the MLS with VPN anymore. So that was surprising.
Yeah, and I think, well, the last time we did go to Vegas, you waited until Black Friday to start researching rates, and it seemed like you got a better deal than you had before.
Yeah, I think last year was $781, and that was arriving Wednesday, leaving Tuesday.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people are planning on coming in early and leaving later just because of the holidays, because Valentine's Day and President's Day is Monday. So that's our plan too, would be to come in on Wednesday and leave on Tuesday. But we're driving, so we don't have to worry about flights and stuff like that. Have you seen any other comments anywhere in school or anything that have caught your eye?
Mm, not that I can think of.
There seem to be quite a few new people. I think one of the new people that joined school, Nicole, she joined our call on Wednesday too. And she was talking about, I think she invests in Utah, but she's in Virginia. Is that right? And I think she has boots on the ground because her uncle is a real estate agent in that market. So he's been helping her. Um, so we're hoping she has good luck with that. she was one of the ones talking about feeling like she was too soft when it came to dealing with tenants or anybody because she seemed to think that she would maybe fall for a sob story or something too soon. Um, and then, JASIC always brings up the point, and I really love that this is a business and we need to treat it as a business, and that nobody's going to watch after our money better than we will. Um, and it's true. We've had Cynthia and I have had some pretty expensive experiences because I waited too long to fire the PM or the contractor or whoever it was. I just in the beginning I just thought the PM will take care of everything, and then once you start digging in and find out all the different things they're charging you for, and not every property management company is the same, right? Obviously, but like I think we talked the other day, some charge to place a new tenant, they'll charge a half a month's rent. Some will take a whole month's rent. I think Cody was saying one of his is fixed at 395, something like that. So they're all different. But in the beginning, and that's another one of our conversations, right? In the beginning, I was just signing everything just to get the place in the hands of the PM, and I didn't really read through it. So I can't complain about them taking a full month's rent if I just signed it and passed it on, things like that. So I think it always helps to finally take the time to look through all those documents, get copies of your insurance, from your insurance agent, different things like that. We've talked before about how the process was so different buying a place in cash. We were able to buy one in cash, and when you buy one with a mortgage, they're after you to show them proof of insurance. But when we bought cash, nobody bothered me about it, so I didn't get it. And luckily, nothing happened. But I ended up, placing insurance like a week later, and so you got to be careful of that. You have talked before about, so we have our taxes and insurance escrowed in, and I think you don't have your insurance escrowed in. Is that how you like to do it?
I do, but it is a lot more work, I'm realizing, because when you're applying for the next one, you can't just give them the mortgage statement. You have to give them all the receipts for all the taxes, all the insurance, and it is kind of a headache. But I just like to have it set aside. And sometimes I'm able to pay with credit card, but I don't even know if that's right because sometimes they still charge you the 3% on that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the points made up for that is worth that extra 3% cost.
Yeah, I think it would be kind of negative, right? Because they only sometimes give you a point um, per. Yeah, they give you a point, but they charge you three, so it doesn't really make sense. I know, like for Matt, he has a huge tax bill, so he always takes advantage of paying that with a card, I think, um, and he uses those points to travel and stuff like that. That's one other thing that you guys have been helping me with is kind of points hacking, learning because I had always heard about it, but I don't really fly, and a lot of people use their points to fly. But now I know there's different cards, and even if the place we're staying doesn't take the points, we still have the option of cashing them in. I know they're not worth as much when you do that, but it's still going to pay for quite a bit of the trip. So we're looking forward to doing that. And not everybody has a business. The business helps a lot because we just charge all our materials for jobs on the cards, and they get paid with each job, and the points just add up. So one of our friends too, Jean Adriano, has her channel, and she talks about points hacking. So that would be a good one. Is it midlife and money?
Midlife miles and points or something like that.
Let's see. Um,
Yeah, Dennis is with Steadily, and he says he doesn't think they charge 10-3%, but he'll check and report back.
Okay, that'd be great. Yeah, her channel is Midlife Money and Miles after 40. So she just started her channel a couple of months ago, and she's putting out some really helpful information. Of course, Lindsay has her channel out. Lynn does investing. Her and Violetta just started doing some recordings together talking about their experiences with real estate. And the last one I think talked about a lot of challenges that they went through too. So, I mean, like we talk about, it's never nice to hear that somebody has challenges, but it is helpful to help us learn some things to avoid. I think there's nothing. No other questions?
No, I think this is a good place to wrap up.
Yeah, great. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to do this again with me. I know we do them every week. This is our first one live, maybe, and hopefully this will record right. The last couple of lives I didn't record for some reason, and um, I was talking to Mark about other streaming services we could use, and he uses what's the name of his? Um, Restream. So he uses Restream, and I tried to set it up for me, but when I did it, I guess my signal isn't strong enough, so I came out kind of blurry when I want to use my background like I have it today. Uh, and I like to use the background, but otherwise you just see my refrigerator. So that's never fun. But I was looking into the other one that Zuber uses. I think Dion and Zuber use a different one. I can't recall the name of that one, but that one for some reason is taking 24 hours to okay me to stream. I have about 4 or 5 more hours to go, but it has been helpful being able to ask AI a lot of these questions on how to get this stuff done. You know, you and I tried to do this last week and we were having a little bit of trouble. We were trying to use AI too, and it just, we couldn't get it going. But looks like we got it this week. So we'll keep practicing.
Right on.
All right. So then I guess we'll stop it there. And we'll look forward to chatting with you next week.
All right. Thanks, Frank, as always. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in.
Yeah, thank you all for jumping on. We appreciate it. How do we stop it?
On lives, the button always seems to go missing, or it's hard to find on the live stream. I'll call Mark.
Oh, yeah, we'll have to call him up.
I still hear you.
I think we're done.
You're on.
I think we're off YouTube.
I didn't matter. We have the. You take your moment around. How can you tell me you're
Because it's delayed. I think we're good.
We're still live.
Are we still live?
Yeah.
Oh, Jason said we're still on. Okay, so we'll end the meeting then, and then I'll call you back.